All right, Nermina, thank you again, and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Let me share my slides with you. I'm going to go through some info about the school. I mean, a lot of info about the school. I'm going to go through, obviously, as well, info about our Albany Medical Center, which is a hospital we're connected to. But I do really want to make sure that all of your questions get answered if possible. My colleague, Divya Patamber, is also in here for the chat. If you have any questions that you want to submit in the chat, she'll be able to answer. And then we can, if you need a more detailed response, I can also talk about it afterwards. But one thing I do really want to say from the beginning is this is just an introduction to us, right? Even if you've been to one of these sessions before, essentially, I'm going to talk a lot about the school. I'm going to also talk about, our numbers and our season, things like that. But I am totally expecting all of you to stay in touch. Don't be strangers, right? Reach out to us. Let us know if you have any questions. I'm not expecting you to become experts after one session. So like I said, I will share my screen to show you these slides, but please keep in mind that you can always reach out after this as well. And I will stay at the end as long as everybody has questions. All right, so do you all see that? Oh, I don't think so. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right.
Don't see it yet. There we go.
Is that working? All right, perfect. So I'm going to go through these slides with you. I do want to talk about as well some history. So I will be going through that. I know history is not the most exciting topic, but it's only about a slide or two, and then we'll get into modern day Albany Met. All right, so I do want to go through this history of Albany Med because I think it is really important. Our founding, why we were founded, all of that is still very much a part of our community here, very much a part of our decision making as well. So we are actually one of the oldest medical schools in the country. We opened in 1839. We opened, just to give you an idea of timeline, right? We opened about 22 years before the Civil War started, right? Just to give you kind of an idea in time. When we opened, we had 55 students in the first year class. There were 7 faculty total, and that's including our founder, Alden March. There was only 3 other medical schools in New York when AMC opened. Now there's 18 total all over New York State. And our very, very first class was taught on January 3rd, 1839. Now, why we opened is our founder, Alden March, who did go to medical school in Massachusetts, moved to Albany, and this is before the railroad, right? So this is a horse-drawn carriage. He came all the way over to Albany, and he was a surgeon. That was his focus. That was his passion, and he just found that there wasn't anywhere for physicians to practice, to hone their skills, to learn more, right? This was around the time where if you wanted to be a physician, all you had to do was essentially register as one. You didn't have to necessarily have a formal education at the time. And medical schools in general as a concept were not very widely available. And that's part of the reason why it wasn't really a requirement, right? If you can't get to one of the 3 medical schools in all of New York, you still need physicians in those areas. So he found that in Albany in general, there was a need for both a hospital but also medical education. He was also, both him and his co-founder, James Armsby, were very big proponents of dissection, which at the time was very taboo. It was not something that was seen as medically necessary. And they just really pushed for both kind of an acceptance of the advancement of medicine, but also the actual formal education of medicine. It was not something that was very common in this area, especially. And around that time, when we started having medical schools, it was actually very common for physicians to learn from their apprentices because their apprentices were going to medical school for the first time and they never themselves went. So it was a really important time as far as the tradition to a more formal education in medicine. And Alden March, who also was one of the co-founders of the American Medical Association, just very, very passionate about medical education, making sure that there is both facility for that everywhere available for people, but also that they are pushing innovations as well. They're always learning about what's new, what more can they do, what more can they learn, right? They're always, always constantly thinking about how we can help people more. That also goes along with one of the reasons we opened Albany Medical Center, which is the hospital. Albany Medical Medical Hospital opened in 1849, so just 10 years after the school opened. And we opened the hospital because we found that there was a lot of people in the area. Alden March found especially the people who were underrepresented, right, low income neighborhoods. They did not have a single place to go for medical care. They weren't able to afford a physician that would just come to your house. So they founded Albany Medical Hospital as a place for people to go, that the entire community of Albany can go to get medical assistance, right? So it was very much founded on the principle of, we are a community. We want to make sure that our community has a place to go where they can get quality medical care, but also that we are thinking of medicine as something to be honored, right? We want to make sure that we are constantly thinking about the innovation, the science, what more we can do. We're never kind of resting on our laurels as far as that is concerned, because we really want to make sure that we're advancing medicine, not just practicing medicine. And I really do want to make sure that I talk about that, because as you see through the rest of our presentation, it is really at the heart of everything we do, that we really, really want to make sure, one, that community, both the Albany community, but also the Albany Med community, is at the heart of every single decision we make, but also that we're constantly thinking about what more we can do, how else we can help, and in what ways our community needs us, both as a college, but also as a hospital. And during this time as well, I think is important to note, there was a large influx of immigrants in upstate New York at the time the hospital was founded, right? So think of upstate New York in general having a ton of immigrants coming. To give you a bit of an idea, right? So Alden March, as far as timeline goes, Alden March was born in 1795. That is just 19 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed, right? So think about that timeline, right? Just 19 years after the Declaration was signed, about 22 years before the Civil War started, right? So huge influx of immigrants in the area. A lot of people who didn't know the language, who didn't have anywhere to go to get help, right? Those were the kinds of populations that he found really needed a place to go, a safe, reliable place to go. We also, as far as, being participating both in our community, but also just in history at large, because that is something that, especially our founder, Alden March, but in general, we really strive to make an impact, make a difference. We're always thinking about what will genuinely help and make a difference. So when the Civil War did start, we did have a lot of our students, our faculty, our physicians serve in the Union Army during that time. Very, very often as battlefield surgeons. There are a lot of, books and things like that you can read from our faculty, from our staff, from our physicians about what they saw on the battlefield. We also, as a hospital, rallied, made sure that all of our, especially the locals that were going off fighting in the Civil War, but as well as anybody injured, was able to come to us as well to get help. It has always been at our core to have those open doors, to make sure we're always in whatever the role of helping is, that is where we want to be. And we've done, I know that's a very, very far away history, but we have done a lot since, right? So I do want to talk about some of our alums just to give you an idea. I know Albany Medical College is not necessarily the first college everybody thinks of when you think of medical school, right? So just to give you an idea of what we've been up to. So we have, huge strides in medicine, like Dr. Jeffrey Friedman. That's that first one right there, as you can see. Dr. Friedman actually founded or discovered the hormone leptin, which is very, very important to appetite, right? So things like that, I'm sure you probably remember learning about leptin when you were even in high school, right? It's a very basic part that you're really going to learn a lot about. And that is somebody who went to Albany Med that discovered that. Dr. Edward Kantsian, who's actually an Armenian immigrant, came to the area, graduated from Albany Med, and went on to co-originate the theory that drug abuse actually stems from self-medicating, not some sort of personal flaw or something like that, but just individuals genuinely trying to do the best they can to help, medicate themselves and go about life at the time. Dr. David Nallen, who discovered the oral rehydration therapy, which UNICEF actually listed as one of the most important medical advances in the 20th century, right? These are all alums that studied here, went on to do things that really made a big impact on history and on the community and on medicine in general. We also have a little less medically related, but still medically related, Dr. Renee Euclid, who was the chief medical officer during the Nuremberg trials. So when Rudolf Hess tried to claim that he had amnesia of everything that he did during that time, it was one of our alums actually that examined him and found that to be false. Dr. Jonathan Doris, this might be a little more recognizable to most of you, is actually the inspiration for JD from the show Scrubs. He was also the show's medical advisor. An alum from here, the show was inspired mostly by his residency in internal med. And then just for fun, Dr. James Salisbury is one of my favorites, a sentimental favorite, let's say. And he is the inventor of Salisbury steak, right? Not really something you'd, put together with a physician, but he genuinely thought of it as sort of a medical marvel as far as meals go. I know that it's a lot more prevalent in, Boston markets across the country rather than hospitals, but still a fun fact I always like to share. All right, so now I'm going to get into the school. Again, these are all, a lot of things I'm going to talk about in great detail, but there's always questions. If you think of questions after this, please feel free to reach out. Even if, you didn't think of it during this session, I am still here to answer anything you have. So our joint degree programs, as you know, we have an MD program. We are a medical school, but we have joint degree programs. We have 3 of them. Specifically have the MD MBA, MD MPH, and MD PhD. We get asked a lot about joint degree programs, so I do want to say that as far as the joint degree programs go for our school, there is no outright application for it. It's not something that you would apply to specifically. The way we work is you would apply to the MD program traditionally, as you normally would. Then when you're here, if you get accepted and then, matriculate, then you would be able to think about these joint degree programs. And we do that for a very specific reason. The reason being that medical school is incredibly hard, right? You can probably have guessed that. It is incredibly difficult. It is a transition, right? It's not going to be like undergrad. It's not going to be like grad school if you went to grad school. It is its own unique, kind of system. It is specifically kind of the hardest science classes you've taken, but an entire curriculum of that, right? So the reason we don't allow people to apply outright to these joint degree programs is because we want you to focus on the MD part first, right? Get to the school, figure out how the curriculum works with your study habits, with your time, things like that. Then when you've kind of got a handle on that, then you can talk to your advisor about one of these joint degree programs. And we do have the perk of kind of lessening the time it takes to get the degrees. So if you do the MD MBA, for example, with Clarkson University, it's just adding 1 year for that MBA. So in 5 years, you have your MD and MBA. Same goes for the MD MPH. Part of the reason you're able to do that is because you are being taught a lot here at Albany Med as well as the programs. So those programs are able to waive some of their requirements or their course requirements for the degree because they know you're getting it here at Albany Med. So you're able to do that in 1 year. The MD PhD program we have, I specifically want to say you can technically do a PhD with any school or any kind of program you'd like to do if you want to do the MD PhD. But specifically, if you decide to do your PhD at Albany Med, we do have a graduate medical program here. If you decide to do your PhD at Albany Med, it would be adding about 2 to 3 years total to your time. So either, your 4 years of medicine plus 2 or 3 years, depending on the program. But you also get stipends, right? For living expenses, things like paying rent, right? Getting groceries, all of that kind of stuff. And you do get the perk if you do your PhD at Albany Med, you do get the perk of being able to actually waive the tuition for your last year because you're going to be doing 2 years of your MD program. You take that leave of absence to do your PhD, and then you come back and finish your MD, right? So by the time you're coming back to finish your MD, you've been paying tuition during that time. If, for example, if you did a 2-year PhD, you would have been paying tuition for 4 years. So when you come back, you don't have to pay tuition for that final year because we're going to waive it for that program specifically. But again, you can do a PhD at a different institution if you'd like to do that MD PhD program. It just wouldn't come with a stipend or that tuition waiver. So just keep that in mind. You can also learn more about the joint degree programs on our website. I have QR codes on each one of these, but you can also very easily find them on our website. So you can see the descriptions. You can also see links to the other school's website. For example, you can see the Clarkson University page for our MD MBA program as well if you'd like. So we also have MD with distinction, and that's different than a joint degree program. The closest kind of analog I can think of is essentially kind of like a minor in undergrad, right? So this is going to be like if you were a major in bio, but you were a minor in English, right? So you're not taking on necessarily an entire major worth of work, but you are getting a formal education. So the way the MD with distinction works, same deal as the joint degree program, right? We want you to start here, get acclimated, get your bearings, kind of master the MD portion of it before you think of adding on. But once you are here and you are interested in one of the MD with distinction programs, you would talk to your advisor and the advisors for the MD with distinction program to look into getting that started. And like I said, because it's like a minor, it's not adding a ton more work to your academic time. It's also not going to add more tuition or more years to your actual overall curriculum. You are still doing the same curriculum. There is just built-in time if you are doing an MD with distinction to be able to do that. So for example, the summer after your first year, you have that entire summer, so 3 months to work on your MD with distinction if you'd like. We also have, for example, in third year, you can take an elective called, essentially it's called research methods, right? So it's just time, nothing as far as curriculum goes. There is no agenda for that class. All you are doing is finishing up projects. If you're writing a thesis, if you're doing an MD with distinction, you can finish all of that up during that time. So you're able to do that. So again, not really adding much time, but it is added work. And that's why we really want to make sure you have a handle on the MD portion of it before you go into or think about doing an MD with distinction. So you understand what kind of time you do have. And also just the bandwidth, right? You're going to be very spread thin as far as the MD curriculum goes. So you want to make sure you have the energy to do that. Now, as far as each one goes, you have these 6 different types of distinctions. You would do essentially a research project of some sort, right? So if you are doing service, for example, you would find a need in the community, right? A service that is not being met or a need that's not being met. You would work on a project about one, what that need is, how it arises, what you can do to take care of it, right? What are the kind of ideas you have on how to fill that need. You would write a thesis, you'd present on it, all of that kind of stuff, right? That goes for all 6 of these. You would essentially be working on one big project for each MD with distinction. And the perk of it is, again, you're not adding more time to your actual curriculum, and you're really not adding many more courses other than, if you do need that time in third year. So you're able to get that kind of unique degree, right? Because it is an MD with distinction. So for example, if you do research, you'd have an MD-DR, right? An MD with a distinction in research. And it makes you look unique when you're applying to residency. It does, give you something a little extra to put on your resume, but it really isn't that much time or cost as far as adding on to your actual curriculum or to your tuition. So I do recommend, if you are interested in one of these 6 different dimensions or distinctions, that if you are here and you do, feel like you have the time and the bandwidth, that you do think about maybe adding one, because it really does add a lot to your resume. But also, I always say, if you're somebody, for example, who enjoys research, you're going to be doing it anyway, right? So why not get the credit? Why not get that extra MD with distinction if you know you're going to be spending time doing it? But again, more info on our website, and also contact info if you do want to reach out. I know, especially if you're interested in something specific, you can reach out to the advisor, maybe ask about previous projects, or if you have an idea for a project, you can ask them if that seems viable. All right, so student organizations, like I said, we are a small school. I know I said that we opened up with just 55 students, but we are about 145 in our first year class now. So definitely more, but still a pretty small school. Overall, total on campus is just a little over 500 students. So we are a very small school. And as far as that goes, we have a very active student population. So as much as it is a small school and it definitely has a bit of a small town feel, is a very, very active student population. We're constantly seeing each other. They're constantly putting on events, things like that, which I really appreciate. So we have 80 plus student clubs and affinity groups, right? So that includes medically related ones, like let's say surgery interest group, right? But we also have ones for everything under the sun. There are music groups, there are running groups, there are art groups. We actually have an arts and humanity or medicine and humanity club here, which is, I think, incredible. They have some amazing events. They have pop-up galleries where we can see the artwork from our students. And I always think that's incredible. We have poetry that the students submit. We have a lot of, different kinds of sides to the students, right? We're seeing different things. We're not just seeing the academics. We're not just seeing the grades or the work on the floors. We're also seeing their creative side. And I always love the opportunity to be able to do that. We have, for example, Coffee for a Cause. That is a club that makes incredible coffee. I'm always shocked at how good the coffee is. Every Friday, they have a different cause they're raising funds for. So all of the funds that you are submitting when you are purchasing your coffee, it goes to a specific cause. They have a different one every single week. So it does feel good because you get to see each other, and it's a nice kind of, warm community environment, but it's also, kind of a good experience to know that you're contributing to something. We also have, as you can guess, AOA. We have the student government, right? Things that you can, pretty much guess that we would have. But I do recommend still taking a look on our website, learning more, seeing if maybe that's something you're interested in. Same goes for the clubs. If you go on our website and our student affairs page, the student life page, you'll see an entire list of all of the clubs. And if you don't find something that you're interested in or something that you think that should exist here at Albany Med, very easy to start a club as well. I do recommend it. Something I do want to say about that, and I know I was talking about clubs for quite a bit, and it's not necessarily something people think about when they think about medical school, but medical school is a team sport. You need community, you need support. So things like being in a club or having, people who enjoy doing the same hobbies as you could really make a big difference. One, because you have a support system that is your community, but two, because I'll talk about this a little later as well, but burnout is incredibly prevalent in medical school. So I do recommend, if you are somebody who has hobbies or enjoys things like, joining clubs or things like that, I recommend you do that in medical school. It will really help as far as mitigating burnout and also just, reminding you that you're a whole person. You're not just a student. So I do recommend that. You can see all of our clubs listed on our website. And you can also see a lot of our clubs on things like Instagram, right? You can find a lot of them there and see what they've been up to, or, follow them, see what kind of events they have coming up. So I do want to talk a little bit about the community here. I know I've talked about community a bit and how we started as far as, that community focus, but it is genuinely in the center, at the heart of everything that we do here. It is, the first question we ask when we're thinking about how do we do things. We always think about how it's going to affect the Albany community and the Albany Med community. So you can see our students here kind of out and about doing a lot of different kinds of things. We have service learning, which on our website, I do recommend you go and check out the handbook that has the entire catalog of every single service learning opportunity available. But service is a huge part of who we are as a school. It is definitely something that we focus on when we're looking at applications. It's something that we're looking at as well. So service is a huge part of what we do. All 4 years here, that service learning curriculum is required. So every single year that you're a student here, you will be doing some sort of service learning or have the opportunity to. You have to have at least 40 hours to graduate. So the reason we do that is because we really want to make sure our students are always connected with the community. Service learning opportunities aren't things that the students want to do, right? There's no, a student comes in and says, I'd like to do this project, let's do it. We always, always, always check with the community, see what their needs are, where, their needs aren't being met. It is not really helpful for us to force something on them when they have real urgent needs that can be taken care of if we're communicating and we're actually checking in with them, right? So all of those service learning opportunities are very, very focused on the community, what they need and how we can help them. And so the community gets that help from us, but our students also get that connection to the community. It is really easy when you're a student, especially a medical student, right? You're going to be somebody who has spent a long time in school working very hard to get into medical school. So when you're here, you're so focused on the curriculum, you want to be the best student you can be. And we really want to make sure that even though that is on your mind and even though that is a priority, that you're not forgetting these are human beings you're working with, right? You're not forgetting why you're going into medicine, and that really at the end of the day, you're here to serve those communities, right? Being a physician means seeing people in their most vulnerable moments, right? There's nothing more more intimate and vulnerable than talking about your health and your body. And we really want to make sure that connection is there for our students, that they understand that, and that when our community comes to Albany Med, right, comes to see a physician, that they can expect to be treated like a whole person, a whole human being, and that our students, won't be so focused on the academics that they forget that. Not to say that you should be focused on the academics, obviously very important, but we really want to make sure that you always have that connection still. And for our community, it's also incredibly important. We are a very diverse community. We are a capital city. We're also a sanctuary city. We have a lot of immigrants here. We have a lot of underrepresented populations here. And as you probably already know, there are a lot of communities, especially marginalized communities, that don't have a lot of trust in the medical field because of their own personal reasons, because of history, right? They have a lot of very good, convincing reasons, right, not to trust the medical field. We want to make sure that our students are out there, showing them that they care, that they're, really thinking about the whole person, that they will listen, that they will get help, right? We want to make sure that we're always bridging that gap, to make sure that everybody in our community feels like they can get the help they need, and knows that they can get the help they need from a very compassionate, empathetic physician such as yourselves while you're out there. So for those reasons, it is very important to us. But again, the people who come to our hospital are our Albany city population, right? They're our Albany community. So when our students are on the floors, when you're, going with the physicians to learn on your rounds, that's exactly who you're going to be seeing. And it is really important that, one, you have that connection to them, but two, that you're not just somebody who is going, from your home to the school and back. You've never been around Albany. You don't really know what's going on. It's important that you see that. For example, on our south end, there's a commercial railway that goes through there. We have a lot of patients that complain about respiratory issues in that area, right? If you're out in the community and you're seeing that, if you have somebody you know is from the south end and they're complaining about respiratory issues, you have some idea about what's going on. You have some sort of context for their lives as people, right? Outside of the hospital, outside of that exam room, what they have going on and how that affects their health, because it is important. And we really do want to make sure that our students not only have the knowledge that is important, but also have the opportunity to express that and to essentially practice that, right? Practice what you preach. So we really do want to make sure that our students and our community are always, hand in hand in that way. We have a lot of student organizations, like I talked about. I do want to mention, again, that we have in general, all of those clubs I talked about, right? All of the kind of fun, exciting, like outing club, the coffee club, all of that. I will talk about USA a little later, which is our Underrepresented Student Alliance, but I do really want to make sure I give them a shout out here as well. They are incredible. They formed themselves about 5 to 6 years ago. They saw there was a lot of intersectionality between the underrepresented groups on campus. So what they did was they came together, they made this coalition, right? They're pulling together resources, manpower, funding to have a much bigger impact both on campus and in the community. And they've done that, I think, beautifully. They're always so incredibly impressive to me how much that they get done. So when you are on our website, I do also recommend that you check out our USA page. They have their own website, which I will share with you in a bit, but I do recommend you look into that. And if it is something that you are interested in, please reach out, because in general, like I said, medical school is a team sport. And there's no reason that you shouldn't, be building that community already, right? You don't have to start medical school to start that community building. And you really do, like I said, need community, right? So I do want to go through some community grand rounds, but I do recommend for this especially to go on our website. You can see a ton of recent topics, see if there's anything that, is of interest to you. But this is a student-led forum. Our students are, as I've said, amazing. They are very active on campus, and they're always coming up with new innovative things, and we really love and support that. So one of the things that came about during COVID was our students started to meet periodically to talk about, the new things coming out, right? The news, things like that about COVID, the spread, all of that. And that actually turned into what is now known as community grand rounds, because they just found they really do like presenting that to each other. And I'm sure as people who are interested in medical school, you get that. You are essentially, right, interested in the science, in the medicine, and you're actually passionate about it. And this is a venue where students can really just share that passion. It's not something you're getting a grade for. You're not given a topic. It's something that you are passionate about and you want to share. I think one of the most incredible things about it is everybody on campus is invited. That means the hospital and the actual college itself. So that is not only your fellow students, but that's researchers, that's faculty, that's physicians, right? That's everybody that you are going to be working with in some capacity. So it is a fantastic networking opportunity. You're going to get to learn a lot, but you also get to meet a lot of people. Networking is a big deal in medicine. I do recommend it. Again, I know I said to reach out because community is important, and it is, but it doesn't stop being important after medical school. So always be thinking about making those connections, and what your community is going to look like once you graduate, right, and go into your residency. Who do you have to call upon to ask questions, to get support, things like that. The community grand rounds is a really good opportunity to do that. It's also a great opportunity if you're presenting on something. For example, you might have a researcher there who has worked in that field or has similar research, and they might say, hey, do you want to work with me on a project, or would you want to work with me in the future, right? And now you've made a connection and possibly a project that you're going to get to work on. So I think that is incredibly really helpful both to the students, but also really helpful, honestly, to the researchers and to the physicians, because they get to see a different side of the students, not just, on the floors doing what you're supposed to do as part of the curriculum, but they get to see what you're interested in and what you have to say about it. And I always love that the students, one, came up with this, but two, that they kept it going even after COVID. I think it's one of the most unique and incredible things that we have here. So the Albany area, I know a lot of you are from the West Coast. You might not be familiar at all with Albany. Believe it or not, I know a lot of people don't really even know much about Albany, but we are the capital of New York State. We do have a lot going on here, I promise. It is a small city. It is very much a kind of small town vibe, but we do have a lot going on here. We have a really, really great location. So as far as the actual Albany Med campus location. Locally, we are located very centrally in that you can go 20 minutes in one direction and you have the city life, right? You have museums, you have restaurants, you have all of that kind of stuff. Then you drive 20 minutes in another direction and you have waterfalls and hiking and all of that. So locally, plenty to do, but we are also centrally located regionally, which I'll show you a picture in a little bit. I know a lot of you aren't familiar with the Northeast, but as far as the actual drive it takes to really see a lot, you don't have to go very far, right? So 2.5 hours, you're in New York City. Drive up north, you can go up to Montreal, you can go over to Boston, you can do a lot here very easily and very quickly. You can spend a day, right, if you wanted in the city and come back. So very centrally located in that you get to do a lot and see a lot without having to go very far for very long. And there really is something for everybody. There is plenty to do as far as shopping or going to museums or restaurants if you're a foodie or, things like that. But there's also plenty to do outside in nature. We're very close to the Catskills. We're in the Hudson Valley. There's plenty of rivers and lakes and hiking and waterfalls, all of that around. So very, very accessible, but also very, very diverse as far as activities and what there is to do. Our students get free CDTA access for transportation. Albany is a very walkable town. I personally am not somebody who enjoys driving, and I don't drive unless I absolutely have to. So I walk almost everywhere, and it's very easy to do in Albany. It's not somewhere where you really need to have a car. You also, as a student, would get CDTA access, which is our bus system. The CD, though, in CDTA specifically stands for Capital District. And I say that because the Capital District region is huge. You get to essentially, for free, go as far as Schenectady and Saratoga. You can go to the races for a day, or you can go to J Street for the day, spend the day shopping if you'd like. So very, very easy to get around, a lot to see, a lot to do for free with that CDTA pass. We also, because the CDTA does have a bike share system, we also have free bike share for our students. And then plenty of housing within walking distance. There is a ton of housing available for the students within walking distance, both to campus, but also to a lot of restaurants and cafes and things to do. So the housing in the area is, I think, really accessible for the students because of that, because they're also able to do even grocery shopping walking if you do want. We are a college town. We have 15 higher institutions. So as far as the housing goes, plenty of housing for students all over the city. If you don't want to be near campus, you don't have to be. If you want to have that kind of distance, that's okay. You can definitely find housing anywhere in Albany for students, very accessible, very affordable. We are definitely, as far as cities go, especially if you're comparing to New York City and things like that, we are definitely a ton more affordable. It's a very affordable place to live, and go out to restaurants and kind of spend the day out. It's very easy to do that here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about student supports, but I do want to give this little sermon first. I do this every single info session, and I think it does still need to be said. One of the biggest issues, one of the biggest concerns we have in medical school is imposter syndrome, is burnout. Right? It is incredibly prevalent in medical school. One of the reasons being that imposter syndrome is incredibly prevalent in medical school. It is very easy when you spend so much time competing in a medical school application cycle. You spend so much time getting those hours, getting your application together, making sure you're getting all of that experience, making sure you're taking the classes and doing as well as you possibly can, right? It is very, very labor intensive. And then when you get to medical school, all there is to focus on is the medical school, right? So you're not in a million different things, kind of having those little successes all over the place, right? You're in medical school, that is what you're focused on, and medical school is hard. And we have a lot of people, not just at Albany Med, but in medical schools everywhere, that once they get to medical school, they kind of have this feeling of, oh no, I shouldn't be here. I'm not as qualified as the other students or, my classmates. So something I do really want to talk about here specifically before I talk about supports is that supports aren't for people who are failing, or they don't necessarily mean that you are failing, right? Supports are there to help you succeed. I know I've said a ton of times now that school is, a community kind of event, right? You need community, you need help, you need supports. It's no different academically, right? When you get to a school, we're going to have student supports. Every school does. They're not just there for struggling, right? They're not just there for when you're like, oh no, I'm way, way over my head here. I need help. They're there always. So specifically what I'm telling you here is, one, when you get to medical school and you start feeling that, oh no, do I belong here? Yes, you do. You went through a very rigorous medical school application cycle. You're not there on accident. One. Two, though, those supports, you don't need to wait until you're having a hard time to use. Please use those supports always, the entire time you're there, whenever you need. We want to see the absolute best you can do, and that means with support, right? We don't want to see what you can do all on your own, because nobody does medical school on their own. We want to see what you can do with support. So wherever you end up going, please make sure you are, one, using the supports, but two, making sure the school has the supports you need to succeed, right? You're there for your own success, for your own career, not just to make the school happy, right? So think about what you need and how the school can help you succeed. All that said, we have academic support. So our academic supports are academic advisors, which, as you can assume, right? All of our advisors are going to be faculty physicians. Something that is unique about our school is that we are a small school, like I said. So that means your actual advisor is going to get to know you. You're not going to have to essentially reintroduce yourself every single time. They're going to be able to recognize you. They're going to remember what you want to go into. They're going to remember what kind of projects you're looking for, things like that. And they're going to be able to talk to you about that, really actually have thorough conversations about it. But another thing that's really helpful is, because they are both faculty physicians, they understand both what academically is necessary, but also what the career entails. So you can get advice from them as far as career goes, but you can also really, really get a lot of networking from them as well, right? They know other physicians. They also know other professors. You can probably, if you have, for example, interest in research in something very specific, it's very likely your advisor is going to know somebody who's doing research like that, right? So another great opportunity for networking I highly recommend. We have peer tutoring, as you can guess. But we also have a learning specialist, a very, very underutilized resource that we have. So our learning specialist is on campus for free for the students all 4 years. Our first year students do have to meet with the learning specialist in order to continue their studies. It is required. It is mandatory in your first year. But again, still there all the rest of the time you're there, all 4 years. So for example, right, come step one study time, things like that, when you're like, I don't know if necessarily my study method is working out. I'm having a hard time with the practice tests. That's somebody you can go to and talk to about that, right? They're available for free on campus always. We also have resources for free as well, such as StatMed, Boards and Beyond, and Sketchy Medical. That'll help both in class, but also in studying, getting ready for tests. We also have a simulation center here is a massive part of everything we do. So it's not listed here, but it is, if you go on our website, it is too much to talk about. It is massive, massive, massive center that we have here on campus, where our students are able to practice clinical skills. So you're learning a lot in class. You're also going to go out on the floors, obviously, to work with patients and see the physicians at work. But you're going to go into the what we call the PSCCCC, or Sim Center for short, to do simulated versions of that, right? So for example, your first year, you learn how to take histories. You also go to the Sim Center your first year and you work with our SPs. Those are actors we hire that are professional actors. So they are pretending to be patients. So you learn how to take histories from them. So you do role play, right? They pretend to be a patient. You do everything you've learned to do as far as taking history. Then they talk to you. They say, as a patient, this is how I felt when you asked me this, or they give you feedback about how you approach something, right? Then you also have a physician who's watching in a different room, and they're able to speak to you and say, I saw that you did this. I love the way you did this. How about next time we try this a little different? Then you go back and you do it again with another patient. We really want to make sure that when you're working with the patients in the hospital, you've already had that essentially that interaction dozens and dozens and dozens of times in the simulation center. We want you to make mistakes. We want you to, try and fail, because that means you're learning, right? And the simulation center is a safe space to do that. It's essentially the reason it's there, right? For you to have those moments. So it is a massive resource. It is there as part of your curriculum. You will have to go to the Sim Center, but it's also there. For example, if you have an exam coming up and you want to practice a skill, you can book a room in the Sim Center and practice that over and over again, right? So we even have residents who still practice skills there. We have physicians who haven't done a procedure in a few years that, have a procedure coming up. They just want to kind of freshen up their skills again, right? They're able to do all of that in the simulation center. So I do recommend looking it up on our website just to see the pictures and see all of the millions of things that they're able to do. It is essentially like a small movie studio in the school. And essentially it's a recreation of a hospital. There's little, rooms with dolls that look like real patients that you can change their blood pressure and administer medications to, things like that, right? So it is one of the coolest things we have on campus by far, but also something that I really think if you're interested in it, definitely dive into it on our website, see all of the different, interesting, cool things you can practice and the things you can do. They also do simulations just for fun. For example, they did a zombie outbreak one year, where they didn't tell everybody that there's going to be a zombie outbreak. They just had one of the actual professors there suddenly get sick, and then suddenly it starts spreading, right? Things like that. Just it's supposed to be fun, right? Because you're passionate about this, you're excited about this, and learning should be fun. So it's things like that that I think make our school really unique, in that we really care about that. We care that you are having a good time, that you're having very hands-on experience as far as learning goes, and you're able to see all of that on our website as well. So as far as wellness supports, I won't go into each and every one of these. Again, as you can guess, it's on our website. But I will say these are the 8 dimensions of wellness that our student affairs department identified as being vital to your well-being. While you're in medical school, right? So I do recommend, 1, checking out the resources we have online, but 2, even just for yourself, thinking about what do I need for these dimensions? What would a school need to have for me to be able to succeed there, as far as this goes, right? And you're a whole person. That is really at the heart of what burnout is you are so focused on being such a good medical student, you forget that you're a whole person, right? So we really want to make sure you're remembering that you are a whole person. You do need social well-being. You do need emotional well-being. Those are all things that are, valid and necessary. So think about that as well. Like I said, this is the map of the Northeast, just to give you an idea. I know a lot of people aren't really, familiar with the specifics, but that in the middle right there is Albany. We are, as you can see, very close to the border of Vermont and Massachusetts and Connecticut. We are, like I said, part of Albany Medical Center, the hospital. So we are a teaching hospital, and we are actually the only academic hospital within 150 miles. And that's what you're seeing on this map here. The very next one up north is all the way in Burlington, over in Worcester in Massachusetts, over in Syracuse, and then down in Westchester County. So as far as clinical opportunities in Albany Medical Center, there are no other medical schools around competing for that time or that attention. And like I said, we have a little over 500 students total on campus. Where we are a small school, Albany Medical Center is a massive, massive hospital, is one of the largest employers in the entire region. We have over 10,000 physicians that work for Albany Medical Center, right? So specifically, I'm telling you all of that because I want you to understand that when you're on the floors as a student, you're getting that curriculum, right? That education. You're not just getting it from somebody who's stretched thin and also has to, essentially work with medical students. We have a ton of physicians. They're able to really speak to you, and you're able to really, get that time and be able to ask questions and things like that. But again, because of the community and the kind of atmosphere we have here, it's also a lot easier to get to know physicians. So you're able to really ask those questions that you might be afraid to ask somebody you don't really know that well. And you're able to get that kind of education. And also come residency time, right? You will need letters of rec for residency. It is a lot easier to get a letter period because you're going to be able to have more physicians, but two, the quality of the letter is going to be better because they'll actually know you, meaning they're actually going to have something to say about you. That is one of the biggest downfalls to a letter of rec, is getting somebody who doesn't really have anything to say about you to write a letter. That is essentially a waste of a letter, right? So we're really making sure our students are getting to ask those questions and getting to make those connections. We are also part of Albany Health System. So the college was opened first in 1839, then the hospital in 1849. We've since added Albany Columbia Memorial, Glens Falls, and Saratoga Hospital to the health system. And that really just gives the students a lot more kind of versatility. We serve everybody here at Albany Med. We serve over, 20 counties, actually, I think 28 counties in the Northeast. So we say the Northeast, but we do have people coming all the way up from as far down as Georgia. So generally the Northeast, but also all different kinds of people. So what that means for the students is, one, plenty of patients, right? Which means you're going to constantly be seeing patients, but specifically the diversity of the patient population is going to be even that much greater, right? You're not just getting Albany, which is an urban environment. You're also getting rural and suburban, everything in between. You're getting people from different climates, from as far up north as, the mountains in Vermont. You're getting people all the way as far down as Georgia, over to the coast, right? So all of those kinds of things impact health, which means that, one, the diversity of the actual population is going to be, incredibly, incredibly diverse. But two, the actual cases that you have as well are going to be very diverse. You're going to see a lot of different things you might not see otherwise. And that's all on campus. You don't have to leave campus to be able to see all of that. Now, the reason people come to us from all of those different areas isn't because there's no hospitals between here and there. The reason they come to us specifically is because of the kind of technology we have, the procedures we're able to do, because we do really try to stay on the cutting edge of everything that we have as far as medical knowledge and procedures and tools and equipment, right? So for example, we have a level 4 NICU. That's the highest level of NICU. We have babies helicoptered in, like I said, as far up as the very tip of Vermont, right, all the way down to Georgia. We have a level 1 trauma center, both adult and pediatric. It's the busiest level 1 trauma center in New York State. We have the only pediatric oncology hematology clinic in those 25 counties that we serve. So just, things like that are what bring patients to Albany Med. So all our students have to do is show up to be able to really see those cases and meet with those populations. And I think the students really appreciate having all of that kind of coming to them rather than having to kind of hunt it down themselves by, doing an away here or an away there.
Hey,
As far
Nermina,
as,
I hate to
yeah.
interject, but I do want to be sensitive to your time, and I know some of my applicants are on their lunch break that maybe wraps in the hour. I also have an alumni who I want to quickly introduce. So I just wanted to give you a sense for where we are in our availability for our students. Just FYI, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. Absolutely. So I am at the end. Like I said, this is the USA, the Underrepresented Student Alliance. That is their website, usa@amc.org. I do recommend you check it out if you haven't already. And then I can open it up to questions. I will go over, I do want you guys to meet this alum, but I also want to just go over kind of our cycle, where we are, and things like that pretty quickly. And then I'm happy to take questions. And that is our admissions email if you don't already have it, and our Instagram if you haven't already seen it. All right, so I'll stop sharing.
And yeah, before we can talk numbers, Drew, I know I announced you, and I also wanted to just share the spreadsheet here. I know, Drew, you have your name on the spreadsheet, but yeah, you're relatively new to the greater Albany area, Drew. So
hmm
just maybe give us some first impressions.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. My name's Drew. I'm one of the just started M1, but I graduated Santa Barbara in 2018. Coming from California, I grew up in San Diego. Went to Santa Barbara, of course, and then lived in San Francisco for a little bit. So California is pretty much all I've known before I moved out here. So if anybody has questions about what it's been like to move across the country, what school's been like, I also remember what the application process is like, even though I'd love to forget it if I can. I just went through it. So if anybody has questions about stuff like that too, I'm happy to answer it. And then again, all my information's in the spreadsheet. So if you guys have questions afterwards, feel free to hit me up too.
Are you availing yourself of some of the resources that Nermina ticked off there during her slide deck?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. All right. Thanks for that, Drew. Nermina, do you want to talk about kind of again for my students where you are in a cycle? When are you extending invites, and how long does your cycle last?
Sure thing. So we are still pretty early on in the cycle. Not much has happened yet. We have started importing AMCAS applications and sending out secondary applications. So essentially, we are expecting about 14,000 total AMCAS applications this cycle. We interview about 720 applicants of those 14,000. And then we have a class about 145, about 85 traditional spots. So as far as where we are in the cycle, we are still just sending out secondaries when we get AMCAS applications. So not much happening now, but we are starting interviews next month. So that's exciting. We're starting to send out interview invites. We interview all the way out until March. We have essentially kind of rolling interviews, just like we have rolling admissions. We don't start sending out decisions until about mid-October. Once we do that, it is all rolling admissions. We send out decisions as they are sent out by the committee. That's where we are right now as far as the cycle goes. We're headed towards that, the 85 traditional to matriculate, but it takes a very long time to get there from the 14,000. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have about our cycle, about the interviews, anything like that you might be interested in.
I'll stop the recording now so students can fire away.